Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome, welcome.
Today we have a dear friend of mine, Mandy, on to talk about some of her journey and her journey through her healing and her journey through helping others. So, without further ado, Mandy, would you like to introduce yourself and all your fun titles and all your fun
certifications?
Yeah, all of that, and then we can kind of deep dive into your life. No pressure.
Yeah, no, thank you, ladies, for having me on this incredible podcast. So excited to be here with you guys and talk about all things healing and helping. My name's Mandy Hanson. I work as a chemical dependency counselor as well as run my own business where I am a certified professional wellness coach. I have backed off of my wellness coaching just due to time constraints and a focus solely on chemical dependency counseling at this time. In college for psychology or for a psychology degree, and have been in college for a very long time. I am slow and steady.
I know. I told, it's funny, I told somebody the other day, yeah, I went to school for 8 years, and she's like, oh, you're a doctor. I'm like, no. I just didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I feel that. So, I've known you for a while and I have experienced some of the, challenges or opportunities for growth, we'll say, that you faced in your life. But could you share a little bit about some of those challenges or opportunities that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, have you met somebody that hasn't had challenges in their life?
No.
Because I actually have. And it blows my mind, right?
Yes.
I met a lady, she's like, boy, the worst thing that's ever happened to me is, my basement flooded and it ruined my wedding dress. And I was like, oh, that sounds awful. I was like, that isn't my story. It has been riddled with opportunity for growth and I guess pain and rising, really. And so starting out as a child, I was raised by an addict that also had some mental illness and a lot of inconsistency in my life, a lot of abuse, and a lot of abandonment. So I grew up to follow in her shoes, becoming an addict myself, and I got the lines of love crossed and thought that violence meant passion and dated men that were abusive. Very codependent. I did find recovery, but also developed eating disorders and then later chronic pain in my body. Just an inability to manage my internal world, and I had no idea how all of this was connected to the trauma that I had experienced in my life. And later on, I would figure some of that out and be able to start my healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
You put that so eloquently.
I know. I'm like, wow. We have an episode that aired back in February about self-love, and we kind of touched on some of that. So if you guys are kind of working through that journey, go back and listen to that episode. But for today, what is some of so out of the, substance use, the eating disorder, the chronic pain, can you take us a little bit on your journeys for each of those and the healing that you like kind of explain, I guess, to
I'd like to
listeners what that
know
is.
also where you found yourself when you were at the breaking point where you decided you needed to change some things. Like, where were you when you said enough is enough?
Okay.
Oh, that's a good place to start.
Well, and I wish it was just one place, but it has been several places. It's been a process throughout my life of healing, and I think that there's this part of me that desires for wellness. I guess maybe not even wellness, but just to be okay. I've always wanted to just survive, and that has involved a lot of healing on a lot of different levels at different times, right? And so, Liana, what did you ask about What was your question?
Mine was about, like, so through the substance use, the eating disorder, the chronic pain, I guess what did each of those journeys look like? And I guess we can talk similarities and differences for each of those if you want to go in depth with that.
Sure. So I think the first step for me was addressing the drug addiction, right? Until I could get some help with that and stop using substances, it was really hard to clock and gauge what was going on in my internal world, right? As far as eating disorders, as far as all of that, right? So once I stopped using and figured out, for me, I joined a 12-step fellowship that was just so loving and compassionate and kind, and they loved me regardless of how I acted or how many times I relapsed, and so for me, that was the first time in my life that I had fellowship and people that were unconditionally loving me and trying to protect me, right? I didn't have that from the time I was born until the time I found a 12-step fellowship. And so with that support, right, because we're humans and we're built for connection, I was able to finally, stop using substances and begin kind of the 12 steps to, I guess, we worked the 12 steps with a sponsor in a 12-step program. What that helped me do was remove some of the wounds and heal some of the wounds between others, between me and others, between me and myself, and then ultimately between me and God. And from there, I started to find some real freedom in my life and an opportunity to dig deeper into things that were, resulted in drug addiction. Right? Mm-hmm. So now that I'm not using, I found this new way to live, and I have support and encouragement to begin healing, whatever that looks like. Then one by one, little issues started to pop up as I went deeper and deeper. And I think it started with the eating disorder. So I had a few years clean, and I got to begin to work on that journey. And that, it was hard to be a woman in recovery and be speaking about being well and acting out in eating disorders. And so the more uncomfortable that got, the more willing I became to address it and change and grow. And I worked the 12 steps on that. I also, I had to, it's funny, but I had to begin a process of like a relationship with my body is what needed to happen. I needed to vote my body back on the island, right? We were always two opposing factors. It was like me and then my body, and we don't get along, right?
Yeah.
So I think when I realized, that my body's actually on my team and it's been doing everything it can to keep me alive, regardless of me starving it, putting drugs in it, keeping it awake for long periods of time, over exercising, under eating, right? Like no matter what, this thing was on my side. And that happened in layers, right? I needed to learn, I didn't learn basic skills, growing up. So I actually, as an adult, had to teach myself how to eat, like what foods have what nutrition. That was a part of it. I had to learn how to look in the mirror and point out things that I love in my body. I had to learn that it was on my team and to begin to appreciate it. I think, creating a loving relationship with food is what I hear people talk about, and that's the least of my worries. My growth and healing with eating disorders has been a loving relationship with me and my body. And trusting it. When I got pregnant, that deepened, right? Because all of a sudden I realized how intuitive my body is. Like when I need something, like my body would crave whatever food had that mineral in it, right? And I mean, how beautifully divine our bodies are made is what pregnancy and becoming a mom taught me. Like, did you guys know that like when a baby is born, its head kind of gets squished, right, coming out, right? And then when you breastfeed, their nose is kind of smushed down like this, so they can breastfeed and they can still breathe, and like so the whole process of our body is so divinely made and so perfectly, perfect, and it's like
So
holy,
complex.
so complex, right? And what a deep appreciation I began to develop. So that can still, my eating disorders can get triggered pretty easily if I don't feel loved or accepted or I feel abandoned. It's really just how I act out and the tools I use now. I want to give you guys time to talk. I know I'm not.
No. You are the
Yeah.
guest.
You're
great.
the one whose voice we need to
But
hear today.
but I have a question for you about the chronological order. So, if I'm remembering right, you dealt with the eating disorder, and then the chronic pain came later, right? That came after all that. So in my mind, I'm thinking you're learning to love your body, you're appreciating your body, you're working with your body, like you have this developing this healthy relationship with your body, and then the chronic pain starts. So what did that do? Because that would throw me for a loop. Like that would fuck
I would be
me
so
up.
frustrated.
That
I'd be
would
like,
fuck
I've
me
done
up.
all this work and now you're punishing me by being in pain?
Yeah.
What is the problem?
Yeah. Well, and I think that it added another layer of loving my body. Ultimately, there was a lot of pain that came with it. I had some pain in early recovery, and I just wouldn't go to the I knew it wasn't good. And I wouldn't go to the doctors because I knew that there were going to be medication involved, and I was scared because, I'm like that little shark from Finding Nemo. Do you guys remember that guy? He's like, fish are a friend, not food, right? And then he gets a little whiff of blood and he's like, we're having fish tonight, And so I was so scared. So I really neglected the pain that was building in my body for about 9 years, until I could not dance. I love to dance, ladies.
I've been dancing with you. I absolutely.
No, I have pictures.
Yes. So she's the one who got me on the dance floor. Okay, so this is.
It
We've
takes a
had-
lot. She likes to play pool, so
We've had some wild nights together too, dancing. So I
love
appreciate
that.
that. But anyway,
I
sorry.
love that. Yeah, when I got clean, I was too scared to dance before I stopped using, and when I got clean this last time, I thought, you know what? I did not survive what I've been through to sit back on the wall and watch other people live. I'm going to get out there, and I'm going to move, and I'm going to celebrate being alive, and I've been dancing ever since. But about 9 years, I tried to dance and I had to sit down halfway through one song, and I just started weeping and finally went to the doctor. And, it was heartbreaking to me, like it's time to address this. And what I ultimately found out is that I had, issues with my spine, and I was born with hip dysplasia in both hips. So both of my hips need replaced as well. And they wanted to start with a back surgery to fix the spine. And I got to tell you guys, this is the first time in my recovery that I lost faith. And my recovery was the most difficult it has ever been because of what you just said, Holly. I felt like I have come all this way just to find out that I'm going to live the rest of my life in pain, Yeah.
You do all this work and then you get handed this terrible piece of news, and you're like, what's that gonna make my life look like?
And it's so easy, like, because I'm a recovering addict as well, and so it's so easy to go back into that why me shit.
Yes.
And so that makes it difficult.
Thank goodness for my mother-in-law, because she would always say, when she would tell me that when she got cancer, she felt similarly, and she would have like this intuitiveness, if not me, then who? And it used to make me angry, but really, like, if not me, then who, right? Like, how am I different than anybody else that has struggles and pain and hurt, right? Like, there are beautiful, wonderful people in the world that hurt, and so it did end up being a life changer for me. As far as that goes, I had a lot of women in my life that surrounded me and supported me in my recovery through that. But I had the back surgery, and something went wrong. And so I spent a year in my bed with like a 3-year-old, right? I could be vertical for about 4 hours, and that would cause so much pain that with each step I would like want to throw up from the pain. And there was nothing that they could do until I had a year of fusion so that they could go back in and see what was going on, right? But that year ended up being the most transformative time in my relationship with myself, because I grieved and I wept, and I really spent time soul searching, like, who am I if I can't do, right? This is someone who's codependent, people pleasing. Everything that I do is based off what I can accomplish and do for other, right? And now I'm in bed.
Stop looking at me.
Resonating with you much?
It's making me tear up. Like, I'm feeling for you right now, having had to experience that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful now. But boy, at that time I was soul searching. Like, who am I? You know, who am I if let's say I can't do service or volunteer or pride myself in the things that I enjoy most? And, you know, there kept being this like words in my head that, I kept hearing like, be still, Mandy, be still, right? And what you guys need to know also, I suppose, that plays into this is that, I didn't have a father in my life until I was 3. So I asked this man, like, would you be my dad? And it's just a random dude, right, that my mom was dating. And he was like, yeah. And he has been solid in my life. He'll be here later today. He walked me down the aisle. Him and my mom haven't been together in decades, right? He's just this wonderful human that loves me like no other. He learned how to meditate in Iowa. It's transcendental meditation, and he would often get stuck with me, right? Like, I would get left with him when she went to treatment or took off, and so it would be this old, you know, farm boy with this like young baby girl, and like we just figured it out, right? But mind you, I'm feral. I have 0 skills for living life. I'm a feral child. And so he took me to learn how to meditate when I was 10 years old. I went through a Sanskrit ceremony and learned all the skills. And then my whole life, you know, I feel this inner chaos, and I've struggled with my feelings being bigger than my body and not knowing how to deal with that. And so every time I would be in chaos, he would look at me and go, have you meditated? And I'd be like, does it look like I meditated? I hate meditating. Why would I want to meditate? Because it was agonizing to hold still. Like, he would be like, it's time to meditate. And we'd sit down for 10 minutes. And the agony that I felt in that stillness was so overwhelming. I just hated it, right? So here I am as an older, you know, I'm a grown woman. I'm stuck in my bed. I keep hearing, be still. And I did not get better. Believe it or not, I kept getting worse until I surrendered to that. I was like, all right, I'll meditate.
You know what's so funny? Like, I want to just interrupt you for 1 second to say, you have these huge lessons that we all have to learn. And it's like this message over and over again. Like, you're taught at 10 how to meditate. And you're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And the universe is like, do this, do this, do this. Until finally, it's like you have no choice. And the universe is like, fine. Then I'm going to make you have to stay in your bed until you decide that you're going to surrender to it and hear what I'm trying to tell you. Mm-hmm. And so often these big things happen in our lives where if we don't want to deal with the things we have to deal with, we're going to be forced.
Yeah, and the universe is going to catapult you.
Yeah, it's a much less fun way to do it, but it will force you to do it. So, what was that surrender like for you?
My friend calls that a cosmic 2x4.
I love it.
Like when you resist what you're supposed to be doing until you get the cosmic 2x4 that whacks you onto. For me, it was one of the most meaningful times in my life, because it meant I just remember my head going, you know what? I'll meditate. Fine. It was like my dad and I used to mess with him when I was little. I'd be poking at him and stuff. He'd be like, you better knock it off. You better knock it off. And I keep going, hey, hey, hey. And then he would just flip me around and pin me down. I go, I'll be good.
Okay, I'm done.
It was like, I'll be good, universe, you know? But I did start meditating. And when I did, I found, found a couple things. One, I realized that for the first 9 years of my recovery, I ran through it, trying to avoid my feelings. I kept myself so busy so I would never have to feel the white hot loneliness of being still. And that was insightful to realize, right? Like, slow down, there's something for me in this moment. And what I did find when I meditated is that within me, I had what I had always been seeking for: connection. I had my wisdom, there was insight, there was peace. You know, the feeling you get when you walk outside in the woods and there's this peace that overcomes you? I have that inside me, and it runs like a river if I know how to access it. And that's what I learned from meditation, right? And I wouldn't have if I wasn't forced into it, really. I did also learn about neuroplasticity, and I started managing my mindset with the pain. You know, I started realizing that what fires together wires together neurologically, and I had to start doing a lot of steps to undo my pain. As far as, you guys familiar with neuroplasticity?
So is that like power of positive thinking type stuff? Is that what that is? I mean, you could go into depth about it.
Yeah. Neurologically, pain happens in the brain, right? That's the science. And neuroplasticity says, I think, that our brain can heal itself, which we used to think it couldn't, right? Mm-hmm. So pain happens in the brain. We have sensories on our body that'll send something up saying there's something, and our brain is what actually says, oh, that's pain, right? But it also, you know, our brain is so efficient, so it will carve out neurological pathways and get deeper and deeper and right. So the more I'm sitting around going, ow, ooh, I hurt, the more that I'm actually experiencing pain, and it snowballs on people. And a lot of times people will be like, no, I don't believe that because my pain is real. And it is real. And it also is being made worse by the way that we behave or think about it, right? And so, you know, for me, I was in so much pain, I found myself like making sounds and stuff so that people around me would know. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want them thinking I was just sitting on the couch all day. I'd go, oh, because I was hurting, but I also wanted them to know that I wasn't being lazy, you know? But it was making it worse every time I did that kind of stuff. And so there's neuroplasticity tools for chronic pain, like ways you think and smell and touch, and ways to reprogram your brain to just slow that pain down, to stop the pain from being overwhelming. And it's cool to know that we have that power ourselves. You know,
if somebody is listening and wants to look into that more, what would they search for?
I have a book that I use with my clients, and it's called, I'm trying to remember the name, but Neuroplasticity for Chronic or Persistent Pain is what it's called. And there's a website that has everything that the book has in it. It's phenomenal. It uses a lot of medical terminology, which if you have chronic pain, you're probably up on that terminology from going to the doctor. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it also gives you these incredible tools like smells. There's a whole chapter on smells and how that can actually reduce pain, and it talks about peppermint turns off pain signals in our brain, and then stuff you don't know, right? And human touch. This is why elders in homes often pass away because they don't have more pain because they need people to touch them. So when I visit my friends that are in assisted living homes, I'm always holding their hands, you know. I'm like touching them because we need that. But it will have a section in this website or in the book, and it actually gives examples of how people are using these tools and to reduce their pain, and it's so cool, right?
I'm looking everything up online that you're telling me, and there is so much, like, honestly, if you're listening, you just Google neuroplasticity and for pain, and there's, like, so many resources that pop up. It's exciting. So we'll find the book. You can link the book to us, and then we'll share it.
Okay. So after all of that, believe it or not, guess what? A year came and I got to go in and have the figure out what was going on. I got to have the surgery, and I got to tell you guys a funny story.
Oh, I love these stories.
They have a good sense of humor, right? When life is hard, what are you going to do? Laugh about it.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
So I'm going in for my surgery to see what happened with the fusion. And, they give you these like red cloths to wipe down with the night before the surgery. So I did all of that. And then I call my husband, who's downstairs, to come up, right? And he comes up, and I handed him a Sharpie and laid on the bed naked. And I said, right, stop looking at my butt on my butt. And so I went into surgery with that on my butt, and then when they flipped me over and I was unconscious, anyways, when I came to, they were all the surgeons were standing at the bottom of my bed, busting up, telling me that they almost wrote a message back.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
But they felt confident that they had found what was causing the pain and had repaired it. And slowly but surely, I've been getting a lot better.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
So, part of meditation, you said, was also the prayer aspect of things.
Yeah, how does your prayer and religion,
Go for it.
But in person, how does that play into all of this, your faith? Because you said your faith was kind of healed throughout this too, your relationship with God.
I guess in the community that I roll with, prayer is where you talk to God, and meditation is where you listen for the answer. Mm-hmm. And so prayer is a part of my practice and my daily, routine for wellness. And I don't have a solid belief in God either, as far as the more sure or certain I get about it, the farther I feel from God. And so I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to spirituality. And but I pray every day, and what that does is keep me right-sized, right? Like, I'm not running around feeling like I'm bigger and more powerful than I am. I'm less... Yeah, I could see you had something to say about that.
I'm reading a book by Eckhart Tolle right now, and he says the more people identify with a specific religion, the further away they get from God. Because we form this, like, identity around it instead of just being.
Right. And that's where I'm at in my journey, too, with the spirituality and religion and things like that, is that the more I teach myself, the more I'm like, I still don't know what I am. But it's getting somewhere, because obviously I'm feeling more, like, aware of everything.
I think you can't think about God. You have to feel God.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Yeah, and I think that indicates a lot of growth. I come from a place of certainty. I find comfort in certainty. I used to think all black and white. I need to know. And that's not the reality of life, right? It's really it's not black and white. It's not this is God and that isn't God, right? Mm-hmm. It is a feeling and a relationship and a connection and guidance and this peace. And so I relate with you ladies on that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all part of the journey, man.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned earlier you are I wanted to say substance use counselor, but it's a chemical dependency chemical dependency counselor. Can you tell us a little bit about what services you do in that, and like what, I guess, kind of promote yourself, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and then I do want to make sure we talk about trauma too, because that.
Oh, absolutely. I think that'll
that comes
segue
down to all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll segue into there, I'm sure.
Oh, perfect. As far as chemical dependency counseling, you guys are going to be interviewing one of my closest friends or confidants or my boss, actually. And it's funny how I got roped into being a chemical dependency counselor, because I promised myself that I never ever would be one. And funny thing, right? Like everything that I have like put as the no-go, never gonna happen is exactly what my higher power has called me to do. It's wild.
Amen. Amen.
I feel that in every bone because I was a teacher and I always looked at the social workers who came in and I was like, I could never do that job. Here I am 6.5 years later doing the damn job. So
I
And
grew
it's
up helping
so rewarding.
everyone.
it is
Yeah.
so rewarding.
And I grew
love
up
it.
having to be forced to help everyone, and I'm like, I'm sick of helping people. I'm not helping people anymore. And every aspect of my life, I'm being called to help people. Like as far as podcasts, the books I write, the speaking that I do, the coaching that I do, everything that I do is being called to help people. It's like the one thing you don't want to do, and it's like,
Yes.
sorry, bro, that's what God called you here to do.
Yes, it's wild. I was running my business. I was very content doing that, working one-on-one with women. And then I also was running like a women's retreat, this very amazing annual women's retreat where women would come together and anyways, COVID hit. And so everything slowed down. My clients were waiting for me. They just wanted in person, not virtual. But during that time, my boss, Charlie, my friend Charlie, kept calling and asking me to come be a counselor. And, I went down and interviewed, and then I heard the pay. I was like, oh no. Yeah. No, thank you. And so I turned him down multiple times. And then I think the third time that he asked, I said, okay, I think this is where my higher power wants me to go. We have this kind of saying in the recovery community that if you hear something 3 times, that message is for you. And so even though I didn't think that that was where I needed to be, I trusted the guidance in my life and said yes and went to work at the treatment center that he works at. And it's been so rewarding. It's been incredibly rewarding. It's helped me learn to be more of an assertive woman. It's helped me to, I'm called to obviously love on people that are not just struggling with addiction, but ashamed of it, and one of the things one of my gifts is that you can sit with me and feel safe and not feel ashamed, and so I'm able to gift that to the people that I serve in
It's
that.
a safe space.
Yeah. And I think that, when you're looking at the population that I serve, a lot of them come from painful childhoods, a lot of abuse, neglect, abandonment, right, that results in some drug addiction later on and some trauma that results in drug addiction. So one skill that my clients have honed is this intuitiveness to know if they're in the room with someone that's there for them or not, right? And so they can feel that. They can feel that when they sit with me, that they are with somebody that cares.
Do you teach them that by demonstrating it? Like, this is a skill they learn because they feel safe with you, and then they can more easily recognize somebody that doesn't feel safe?
Yeah, always guiding them to learn or to learn how to trust their bodies. But that's an instinct that they've honed since childhood, usually.
I think a lot of times people ignore it, though. They don't recognize it, maybe.
Or abandon themselves. They're so used to abandoning themselves and like, that can't be right, I must be wrong.
Well, having a safe space to build the trust for somebody else and then in turn trust yourself, I think is a big product of growth, and especially going into recovery.
Yeah, so I love what I do. I generally have a caseload of about 20 clients a week. I do 2 assessments and 2 group therapy sessions, one of which is a mindful meditation group, which is how I end my work week, and it just lights my soul on fire.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Get to meditate with these guys. Yeah, breathe,
Yeah.
meditate, and yoga, and it's all the things that I love.
That is awesome.
Do they hate the meditation the way you hated it when it first came around?
Well, I know. So I'm so glad that you asked because they do not. And I'm always so amazed at that. Like they can meditate for long periods. I would be like, we're going to meditate for 20 minutes. And then I would like open one eye and be looking at them to see if they hate it as much as I did. And they do not. They enjoy it. They like that peace.
Nice.
And I guess I was a rare one.
Well, you know, our we're all unique. We're all bio-individual. And some of us have a hard time sitting still and others have an easy time sitting still. So it just depends on the person, I think.
There's been a lot of clients that have convinced themselves that they aren't good at meditating. And if they stick it out in my group, they learn, because we do a different type of meditation every week. And so eventually they stumble onto one that feels good, right, and true to them, that they enjoy, and often becomes their practice. And then they come back and teach a group when they're alumni, which is incredible.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is cool.
I think that variety allows them to find, what works for them and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So after go ahead. You had a question. I'll not cut you off.
No, I wanted to move on to the trauma thing that you
me
were
too.
talking about. Is that what you were going to say? Great minds.
Yeah, how did trauma play into all this? Did you discover that after all of this? Like, you've done all this work, and then you were like, oh, crap, I still have all this trauma I haven't addressed.
No. I think, I'm not sure when my trauma healing journey began, other than it was later, right? It was like 9, 10, this pain, the pain and all of that was a big part of it. Like it was all around that same time frame that I ended up, my friend invited me to go to this trauma healing weekend thing, and it just like blew my mind. I had read The Body Keeps a Score. Have you guys read that book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, phenomenal. And then I go to this trauma healing weekend, and they do very odd things there, but
What kind of odd things? Tell us.
Tell us all
girls,
odd things.
ladies.
I've been to some weird ones, so I want to hear it.
Yeah, we'd all check in together, and then you break off into small groups throughout the weekend, and somebody processes, right, on a mat, generally with a blindfold, and the other people witness. So a few people are around them and just supporting them, sometimes like putting a hand on them, and then a psychiatrist was actually doing some walking them back, like I'm trying to remember, I might have blocked this all out. Like guiding them like you're 40, you're 30, you're 20, and then where do you want to stop? Anyways, and then that person got to process some old trauma, and it was so interesting because they would start blowing their nose and like all these tears and like that. They were kind of saying that that's like the toxicity leaving their body. So there was tissues all around. I saw one lady regress like into a bear or something, or a tribe. I don't know. She was growling. It really triggered me, all the screaming, and there was like pounding and stuff, and I'm just sitting back watching at this point, and I was very triggered from just the screaming and loud noises and freaked out. And then, it's my turn to be on the mat. And I remember him walking me back, and like I found a piece of myself, like I had a memory of a little, when I was little, I hid in a closet once, and I had found myself there. And I remember the psychiatrist being like, do you want to invite her to come home with you? And I didn't. I was like, no, leave her there. She's weak, right? Oh, I ain't doing this. But what I found so fascinating after reading The Body Keeps a Score, she did ultimately want me to release a lot of anger. She said I was holding a lot in my body, and I was not able to get there until Sunday of the weekend to where I let any of the anger out, because that just isn't a safe feeling for me. But what I found is that when I was processing, all of a sudden my neck and throat was in so much pain, right? And she's like, well, it's because you need to say something. I'm like, I'm hurting. And then my hip started hurting. Like I was screaming from the pain. And she goes, yeah, something happened, right? What happened? And all this. And it's like, she was pointing out how the trauma was connected to the pain that I was experiencing when I processed. And as soon as I was done processing, guess what? The pain stopped.
Gone.
Wild. Wild, right? And so
I had goosebumps.
it's not completely like I do have hip dysplasia, but like it was just processing the trauma made it just go. And then as soon as we were done processing, it stopped. And I was like, wow, it's incredible to know that. Like, I learned a lot about myself. One, when things are really uncomfortable emotionally, I cap it off and store it in my body. That's where I hold everything, and that was tearing my body apart, literally, right? Sensitivities, right? I was getting sick. I get sick anytime I was getting stressed out. Pain was escalating.
I know. I just got sick, so.
Yeah.
It was after a bunch of
She stares at me when it's
shit.
my turn, so I'm staring at her now.
Yeah. Then I think also learning that, as a young girl, I didn't know that how trauma is stored in the body like that. And for me, I've had throat problems my whole life. I had strep throat probably 25 times as a child. I've had it as an adult. I had it after my tonsils were taken out from strep being, and it's just this reoccurring, pain in my throat when I don't feel like safe enough to say what I need to say. I get sick and it hurt and it manifests in my throat. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
That is wild, yeah.
So I've had to learn how to speak my truth, and how to say things and ask for what I need and identify how I'm feeling and find people that are safe in my life to do that with, and then let go of people in my life that aren't, Wild.
Yeah.
Did you find that to be difficult, the letting go of people, or did that come as a natural byproduct of all the growth that you've been doing?
I think that's part of my ongoing process is like learning boundaries. And it's funny that I teach them because I'm, constantly learning how to honor other people's boundaries and how to keep my healthy boundaries, how to move people sometimes to a different level, an outer layer of a friendship or acquaintance, and then also being open to moving them back into a close friendship if something changes or grow, if I grow or they grow, because I used to just be that black and white, you in, you out, and everybody's out forever.
Believe it or not, her and I had a situation like that happen like maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, we stopped being friends and then...
So we were at a really low place in our journey together about like a handful of years ago and had to grow from that and had to really assess our boundaries and really make sure that everything felt safe again. So it took a couple years to get back, but obviously here we are doing a podcast project together.
Yep. And probably closer than ever, right? Conflict plus resolution equals intimacy.
Honestly, yeah, because even through the journey of the podcast, we've had a couple situations where we're like, nope, I don't like this. We need to figure this out. And it's really like a growing journey between us that we get to share in real time with the people who are listening. So that's awesome.
You know what I find interesting about healing in general and your journey specifically? That it's not just one thing. Like, people are out there looking for, like, tell me the one thing that I need to do to fix me. And it's not a one thing. Like, you have to keep continuously looking at what's not working and working on the areas that you need to work on. And it's a combination of things. Like, you started with the eating disorder, and then you moved to, pain, and then you had to deal with some trauma. And you're just progressively working on these things that need to be worked on. Not all at once, because that's overwhelming, but you're just taking the biggest fire and starting to work on that. And then when that's out, you're working on the next one. And as you keep continuously searching and trying to make your life better, you encounter these tools that help you, or these people that help you, or a book that helps you, or something that resonates with you. And you can have this information come at you, and at the time you think, oh, I don't know that resonates. And then later you'll think, oh, that was a piece of this puzzle. That it is all clicking into place. And I find that if people just continuously look, they'll eventually find the answers. And if they continuously try to do the work, it will all come together.
Well, I mean, it kind of says it in the 12 steps. Like, first you got to be willing, you know? Like, that's the first thing, is, like, just know that you made some bad choices, know that you fucked up, be willing to fix it. And then everything else kind of, after you, like, break down that barrier, surrender, break down that barrier with yourself, everything kind of comes into play. Mm-hmm. It's magical.
So once I realized what trauma was and how it was wreaking havoc in my life, just like you said, the universe sent me some incredible people that introduced real healing tools for intense trauma or complex trauma like I have. And so I got Charlie introduced me to brain spotting, and then I also got a real baddie psychologist that specializes in complex trauma, and he uses brain spotting also. He loves that, but he also does NARMS. You guys heard of that?
No.
Yeah.
Tell us
the
what
acronym
both brain
stand for?
spotting and NARMS
I
are.
have no idea. I had to look it up myself because I had never heard of NARMS. That's why I was asking you. And I looked it up and I don't even remember, like neurological, but it's this like process that he walks me through. It feels like mental gymnastics, and then finally I surrender, and it's like it helps me restructure internally, and all of a sudden I can do things that I never could do before. He'll be like, what do you want to work on? I'll be like, I don't know. And he's like, do you want to work on what gets in the way of you knowing what you want to work on? I'm like, see, that kind of gymnastics? I'm like, yeah. But
Sounds
like,
great.
yeah, like noticing, learning that shame is a trigger for me to titrate my pain, and how I basically would turn on myself. Like if I felt abandoned or rejected or overwhelmed, what I would do is shame myself so that I could take control of the emotional pain and titrate it and be, and learning what those feelings are that my brain just thought were going to kill me, right? If I felt anger, I was just going to, and so I'd avoid it at all costs, right? Mm-hmm. So between him doing NARMS and then Charlie doing brain spotting on me, I have really begun to restructure internally and heal parts of myself and do things like, instead of do things like become the woman I really want to be. Like I no longer have to give away my integrity or dignity any single day. That's a big deal. Yeah.
So for people that don't know what brain spotting is, give us a brief introduction to that. We're going to have Charlie on the next episode. So if it's something that people are interested in, tune in for that. But if you could just give us like a brief intro to that and what it is.
Yeah, do not miss the episode with Charlie, you guys. He is so incredible and passionate about brain spotting. He will definitely be one you want to listen to. Are you guys familiar with EMDR?
A little bit.
Okay. So this fellow that started brain spotting, he was a therapist. He was doing EMDR on survivors from when the towers fell. And essentially, using right to left eye movement to desensitize some traumatic memories and experiences. He noticed that if he stopped at he noticed every time he passed by a certain place that someone's eyes would do something funny. And so every time he passed through, he was getting what they call like an eye wobble. And so eventually he just decided to stop. Right? And then let them process through that. And so what brain spotting essentially is what we do is we access trauma through the body. Like if I come in and like, Charlie, I'm just feeling really anxious, and he'll go, okay, where do you feel that? I feel it in my heart. It's tight. He's like 0 to 10. I'm like 8. And he has me put my focus on my heart, on the pain in my body. And then we use sound, basically right to left sound that keeps a felt sense of safety so we don't go into fight or flight. And while I'm focused on this, he'll use a pointer and find my field of vision that connects to that pain. So basically, I'm following with my eyes, and at one point, my pain will go from an 8 to a 10. And he can see it. Like, I don't even have to tell him. My nervous system will let him know, right? It'll start with like weird body movements, or my eyes go up and down. So then when he finds the neurological eye position, right? Because our eyes are windows to our soul. Because like, think about when you're ashamed,
That's so
where do you look?
fascinating.
It is.
When you're ashamed, where do you look?
Down.
Down.
Yeah. And probably to a specific place. Like I look down and to the right, right? So he finds the eye position that connects to our shame or to the to the anxiety that I'm working on, and we hold that, and it essentially ramps up until it comes all the way down to a 0. It disappears, and he'll go, okay, what are you noticing? And I'll say, it's gone, and he'll say, bring it back. Right? And we do this 3 times. We bring it back to a 0 3 times. And then eventually it'll be like, what are you noticing? I'm like, I don't even know what we're working on anymore because it's gone. Right?
Yeah.
And what it does is it lets that trapped memory gets processed through to long-term memory. And like it was meant to all along, right? So when we have traumatic experiences and memories that are trapped in our brain and not processed all the way through, we have emotional landmines around them. We see something, smell something, someone sounds like someone that we used to know, it like creates a trauma trigger, right? And so when that happens, when we do brain spotting, we process it all the way through. I still have the memory, but I don't have the emotional landmines around me, right? I don't have that trigger anymore setting me off. And just so profound. How incredible.
What a game changer.
Right?
Yeah.
And people love it because they don't have to tell their therapist what they experienced.
They
You don't
can
have to
just
sit there
process
and
it. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
get sick of your own story sometimes. Like, I don't want to talk about this.
Well,
again.
that's why, I mean, you hear it because you're in the behavioral health field. Like, you probably have clients who are resistant to therapy because of the talk, the talk therapy portion of it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to bring it up. They don't want to keep rehashing this, thing,
Mm-hmm.
So the brain spotting, you don't have to. I mean, you can rehash it with yourself in a safe space.
Yeah, but you don't have to, can be re-traumatizing to even be, you do have to feel, deal, and heal and stand still and grow, but, and go through the discomfort. But I think that, trauma happens in relation and the healing happens in relation. And so when you're like sitting with Charlie and he's holding safe space for you, like, and I know when I ramp up and I'm processing and it's all ramping up, I look to Charlie and he looks totally confident, right? I'm like, okay, I guess this is,
I guess this is normal.
Yeah, he's the one that's anchoring me to a safe space to let me even access that and process. So incredible.
Oh,
And I
can't wait
have
to hear
clients
more.
that don't want to do this work because they don't understand how it's still impacting their life. That's what that weird weekend taught me, is how trauma is still in every part of my life. I didn't, and that's what made me want to do trauma work.
I have friends that are desperate. One friend specifically that is desperate to figure out how she can stop feeling the things that she's feeling in her body, and I am going to send her this episode because that's
And
going to
Charlie's.
be and Charlie's for sure, because it's going to be so perfect for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Let me know how it works out for your friend.
So tell us how self-compassion plays into all of this.
Self-compassion. Let's see where that came into play. Let me think. I'm thinking after chronic pain. So after I got up and moving, I started to I made a radical decision to change my career choice at that point to become a wellness coach. And I had a new empathy for people with chronic pain, a new understanding, and I started actually working in that field as a coach, right? I wanted to support people that had chronic pain, working with neuroplasticity. And during that time, I learned about self-compassion from Dr. Kristen Neff online. And she, she's she's a doctor and she specializes solely in self-compassion. All of her science is around that. And so, learning learning what self-compassion was, it was like, oh my goodness, how come I didn't know this earlier, right? Learning that self-love is this, self-compassion is this unconditional positive regard for oneself. Basically, learning how to be a friend to myself, which means learning how to say things in my head to myself that I would say to you guys, right? If you were struggling and you were like, Mandy, I'm really suffering, or I made this mistake, like, what would I tell you? But reversing that towards myself. And I just didn't even ever realize that that was an option. And Kristen Nefferle brings up some of the things that stop people from wanting to do that work too. She busts the myths around it, like, well, what if I'm lazy, or I don't take care of myself, or what if I'm not productive anymore if I'm nice to myself, right? And she has the science that supports, when we're a friend to ourselves, we actually make better choices, right? We eat better food. We actually try harder because we're not afraid to fail, right? We'll let ourselves fail forward. So when I learned that, it was part of my practice as a coach and teaching other women about, oh my goodness, how to be a friend to ourselves.
That's
Do you have a
amazing.
few quick tips for how to be a friend to yourself? Like when you're coaching people, what would you tell somebody that's struggling with that?
So the first thing, yeah. Yeah, the first thing is monitoring our thoughts and, like I said, matching my internal talk to myself to someone that I love. So I try to talk to myself the way that I would my daughter, encouraging and supportive and nurturing, but also honest, right? Not then I learned that there are Kristen Neff's 3 steps for self-compassion. I'm trying to think what those are. So it is mindfulness. What are the 3 parts of self-compassion? Do you guys know these? Common humanity and compassion, I think. So I think one of the activities that I would do is like hold your hands tight like this. Hold on just a minute.
Edit.
I'm finishing up, Bugs. I love you. I'm coming. We're running late for church.
Oh, we'll wrap up here.
Yeah. So if you hold your hands tight like this and you notice what does that feel like in your body, right? A lot of people would say like tense or tight or rigid. And right, this is what criticism feels like in our body, right? And then if you hold your hands kind of like this, open and up. Notice how that feels in your body. That generally feels like mindfulness. We're open. We're open-minded, right? Calm. Like if you hold your hands like you're hugging a tree, what does that feel like in my body? You'll get words like connected or grounded. And this is common humanity. This means like I'm no different. I struggle the way that other people struggle with this, whatever's going on. And then, 1 or 2 hands on our heart, what does that feel like? And this is nurturing. This is supportive. This is what compassion feels like. So the 3 steps are 1, to notice when I'm suffering, right? When I'm beating myself up or I'm stressed out, to notice when I'm suffering. And that takes mindfulness to recognize that this is normal, that everyone suffers like this and this, and I'm not alone. Because the first thing that has to, basically, if you feel alone in something, you will suffer. So as soon as you don't feel alone in it, you're no longer suffering. So this is a moment of pain. Everyone hurts like this at some point. And how can I be kind to myself? And then put some hands on here and do some nurturing. And those are the 3 steps, right? Pretty incredible.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and anybody can do it, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we know you have to run, but do you have any closing advice for people that are just starting their healing journey?
Be patient with yourself. I would find a tribe. I would find some, if you're trying to go this route alone, that this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. We need support. So assemble a team, right? Get a professional on board and find some people that are equally working towards wellness in their life. And not that you need a million friends or anything, but a support system is required. It's, it's going to be a part of this journey. And being willing and open-minded, like Liana said, is incredibly important. Just be gentle. Be gentle and patient, and try some new weird things out.
Awesome.
Don't be scared of the weird stuff.
Don't be scared of the weird stuff. Don't be scared to try anything when you're in your spiritual healing journeys or growth journeys. So we have a whole month of healing professionals that's launching for this month, and so any listeners who are listening, tune into all the episodes.
Yeah, they're
going
to
be
so incredible this month.
Every one of our episodes is going to be a guest speaker and who is a healing professional of some sort.
Yeah.
So
send this episode to anybody that you think it would be helpful to. I can't think of anybody that it wouldn't be helpful to, so basically send it to everyone in your contact list. And Mandy, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing all of this information. It was so valuable to us, and I know it'll be valuable to our listeners, so I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you so much.
And if you want to be best friends, you just let me know, because I am available for you.
Always looking for wonderful women to add to my tribe. Also, let me know how some of the people that you guys are touching, how this lands, and if they need any more resources or specifics, that I'm available to reach out to. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes,
Thanks,
we
Mandy.
will tag you in the posts and the social media posts and things like that.
Thank
awesome.
you.
Well, thank you so much for listening.
Bye,
And thank you
ladies.
so much, Mandy. Don't hang up.
Hold on, it's going to just process for 1 second. It has to make sure that it's uploaded on your end.